Hello and welcome to the GUESS EdTech Virtual Summit Dubai. Thank you for joining us. We're pleased to introduce you to Linda Parsons, Digital Lead at Deira International School. We hope that you enjoy this session, and over to you, Linda.
Hi, and I'm going to be talking to you today about, just get my slides up. I'm going to be talking to you today about writing a sustainable digital strategy for your school. Now, your school being, or every school being unique, I'm going to share with you the tips that I used or that we used over the past 18 months to make sure that our school is exactly where on the trajectory that we would like it to be in terms of making sure that our school is future-proofed. Okay, so this is the eternal dilemma of all schools nowadays, whether you're public or private or state or whatever country you're in. You want to write some kind of strategy so you're not losing money, or some kind of strategy so that the children get as much as they can out of education in the 7 short years that they're with you, that represents yourself, represents the environment that you want to show your students and the parents. And that represents the views and the goals of all of your stakeholders. That doesn't intimidate or doesn't alienate teachers and detracts from the actual teaching and learning, because you don't want to do that. So you want something that is harmonious with all stakeholders and your school vision. However, okay, you also want it to be adaptable to the ever-changing world that we live in. So I picked digital transformation. I'm very interested in it because it's so complex and it changes so fast. And I think this year was the most obvious in how it can change not just our education system, but our entire lives, and how adaptable EdTech or technology can be. So therefore, writing a strategy and kind of trying to predict the future of EdTech and trying to be accountable, whilst at the same time being as adaptable to new EdTech that's coming out, can be a little bit of a balancing act. So that's why I'd like to talk to you about it today. The reason why I really like talking about this is because, I've been in a number of schools, and this school has also been through its phases of Apple. It is now a Microsoft school. I used to be in a Google school, but predominantly I went into teaching because I am a teacher and I'm a science teacher. I'm an IB biology teacher, so I have the privilege of being able to teach teenagers and young people biology, chemistry, and physics. So we see the world of the abstract, the world of the virtual world as well, which we can use very well in science. So that is my background. Last year, we used education technology so much, and I'm such a massive advocate of it that I managed to become an MIE fellow. So if you do ever want any help, you can find me on Twitter, and I will give you as much help as possible, or introduce you to other people that can help you as well. So why do I like change change management, looking at change management and looking at digital transformation? A quote that I still really, really like is, "Innovation is a change that unlocks new value." And looking at the digital environment and looking at digital transformation, you are able to make a sustainable and permanent change, a real change in the way that you teach and you learn and you integrate and you communicate within a school. It's widely kind of, I guess it's like a popular opinion now, where people say that education hasn't really changed in 100 years because, we've been learning since the beginning of time. So why change something, and why make it, more complicated than it really should be? You're not trying to make it more complicated. Digital transformation tries to make things easier for everyone involved. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to change the mindsets of people, of all ages, of all disciplines, and I find it really interesting. And we picked digital to change the school and the teaching and learning environment because it touches every single part of the school. It's not just the teaching and learning, it's also the pastoral, it's the well-being, it's the device management, it's keeping children safe, it's making sure that they know how to communicate in the outside world, in the real world kind of thing. And so it has the ability, the unique ability to tie an entire school together, an entire school community together with the parents involved as well. So what do I mean by looking at the main kind of drivers in our digital strategy. It's the ability to communicate. It is our digital citizenship, it's our educational technology, it's our device strategy, and it's our digital skills. And all of them together make our digital strategy. So it's, again, touching every single aspect of our teaching and learning and our school environment. So in order to change, and in order to make that framework, like a change sustainable for all 5 of those circles, you need to make it sustainable for all 5 at once. If you only change device strategy, but they have and you get these flash new laptops or iPads or whatever you choose to get, but you don't communicate that, you don't bleed that into the teaching and learning, that there is absolutely no use for that. And Mark Anderson actually has made many matrices of showing why you need to do all of them all at once. Otherwise, if you don't, then you're going to get things falling down. And a nice framework that I've used for the last 18 months is something called the ADKAR model, which is actually used by Microsoft as well. Okay, so it's our framework for change. So ADKAR stands for awareness for change, desire for that change to happen, knowledge for why that change is needed, ability to facilitate that change, and then reinforcement or reflection of new skills. And then theoretically, you start again at the beginning of the next year or the next planning phase or the next term you want to, so you kind of carry on with your digital strategy like that. Okay, but in order for this to work, you need to make you need to make a vision and a way that you can go through that ADKAR model, which ties it through with your and ties in your whole your stakeholders, so that they have your back, they have your back, they have your support, and you have and they will support you through that change. And so who is involved? When I say stakeholders, the people that are involved in our digital strategy, and this is kind of taken from again, Mark Anderson and Al Kingsley, who've written 2 books on this now. It's 6 stakeholders, which are really, really important to get their voice in, to get their opinions in, and to make sure that they're all on the same page before you start. Okay, so you have your teaching and learning leaders, your students, your parents, your teachers, your IT management, and your administration. Okay, so your teaching and learning leaders are usually your SLT or your executive committee in the school, and it's your head teachers. It's the people that are in charge of the pastoral and the teaching side of your daily runnings at the school. It's the teachers, and the army of them is with several disciplines, with several years of experience or backgrounds and experience. The digital side of the school must work for them as fluently as it does for these students. And your students, it's wrong to think that they are digital natives. However, as much training as they need, they would also have an opinion on what works for them or what doesn't work for them. So it's important to kind of keep them informed and have them invested in the change that's going on as well. The parents are obviously the ones that are driving at home, the ones that are going to be your link between your students doing your homework and your students in class doing their classwork. So it's important to have them knowing how to access your new digital environment or your improvements on your digital environment. The administration is the main communication, usually to home, especially in private schools. So it's important that they also have a fluency in how they are communicating with parents and communicating with teachers. Because, for instance, if you are a Microsoft school, you don't really want your administration and your administrative side on Google, because then it makes it so every time you open a Google form or a Google Doc from the administrators, your teachers and your parents and your students get frustrated because they have to have multiple accounts. And finally, your IT management, which is the backbone of the school. Okay, and they without them, the hardware, the Wi-Fi infrastructure, and the device like management and turnover, like from old teachers to new teachers, would not be as fluent. So it's really important that you make this digital strategy with the advice and also with the support of IT management, because otherwise you may be putting in two different directions. So going on to awareness, okay, which is your first one. My top tip for awareness is to ask as many people as objectively as possible what they think is going to be best for their environment, their daily environment, whether they are learners or teachers or administrators and so on. And also have an honest conversation, a really, really honest conversation with your IT manager on what is being used, what you think is being used, and what is not being used, but people are too scared to say that they're not actually using it. A great example of that is the whole interactive whiteboard thing. Okay, like people wanted to use them, people thought they were really good in classrooms, but ultimately there wasn't, like in many schools, although people say that they're using it, the actual kind of objective, like are they actually using it for teaching and learning? It didn't really follow through. Okay, so like number two, focus on the teaching and learning. So like when you're asking people like, certain questions about certain platforms, about, certain hardwares that they're using, focus on the teaching and learning and include the students and the teachers. And you need to have objective, quantitative and qualitative data. It needs to be accessible on all of the platforms that you're using, even mobile phones. I know that mobile phones are not necessarily used in an education setting, but they're still used for communication with many students, and they're definitely used with parents. So if your form can be mobile accessible, mobile compatible, then it's going to be a lot easier to gain the opinions of people without having to annoy them by like having to go to a certain device, and it must be personal to your school. Okay, the personal to your school bit is because I've actually shared this QR code, and this bit.ly shares an example of a Microsoft form that we used to audit our school. We started out 18 months ago. We had around about 100 different platforms going from the early years all the way up to IB2, which was essentially like, 100 different platforms that, the parents, the teachers and the students had to, I'm still at school, sorry, okay, had to use, had to remember their passwords, had to remember all of their login details.
Sanitize your hands regularly and stay safe.
This meant that, throughout a child's school day, it was very difficult for them to actually access the learning. So one of the things that we wanted to do was to do this digital audit to make sure that everything that we use was could be kind of pulled into one environment, so that made it more fluent for them. So you need to make sure also that every single platform, even the smallest, littlest platforms, are being audited to show that they're actually being used in a sustainable way, so that you're not wasting money and you're not wasting people's time and you're not getting people frustrated, because otherwise they'll just turn away from the digital strategy and they'll turn away from your digital environment. So on the back of that, make informed choices, taking into account the platforms that you're already using and the platforms that your teachers and families already use as well. Familiarity means like, so if you have a common platform that all of your students and your families are using, to then know about that, but then go completely the opposite direction, unless you have an extraordinarily good reason, it's going to be like very difficult for your students and your teachers and your parents to change. Okay, so like we know that we were mostly an Apple school when we started like the Microsoft route, but we started the Microsoft route because we knew it was going to be better for the teaching and learning of our children, like going forward. Okay, so what we did was we made sure that all of our like education suites and everything worked as well or was compatible with Apple devices as well as Microsoft devices. And we needed to also make sure that we made that really, really clear to our parents, but I'm going to go into kind of like what kinds of communication we did to our parents, our teachers, and our students later on. Okay, so these are an example of the things that we use throughout our school. And you also need to make sure that your teachers, your families, your students are also aware of how to log in. A lot of our things, because we use a lot of Microsoft, like we have a lot of Microsoft single sign-on nowadays, because it just makes it easier for everyone. Okay, so number two, like once you have your awareness on what kind of change is needed, and the awareness of kind of, you need to kind of develop a desire and a knowledge for why that change is needed and why that's going to benefit your stakeholders. Okay. My advice is go big, okay, and be ambitious, and be that vision that everyone needs, okay, because then like you can then like bounce ideas off like your various stakeholders and find like a happy medium. We wanted a place, essentially, like our school needed a place that was a communication, a platform, a digital environment that was a communication hub as much as our physical school was a communication hub, okay, and it needs to be cross-platform and cross-department. So it needs to work all the way from the teachers from early years all the way up to the teachers to IB2. Okay, we wanted a cloud-based school, okay, to ease flexible learning and workload, because 18 months ago we were mostly on physical servers, and if you ever wanted to do like a Word document with your colleague, you had to both sit on a desktop at school and both type into a cloud, like there was no cloud-based, it was all on the physical server, or you had to make multiple copies of the same document. It just got very messy. Or like you had to just download it on your hard drive, which is again was not the most ideal way. Okay, so now we are completely cloud-based, and that took 18 months of preparation to do. We wanted devices optimized for access according to primary and secondary needs. At the time, 18 months ago, like we had kind of a one-size-fits-all policy, and then we had like certain kind of special teachers, I guess, like data managers, for instance, with the more powerful laptops. Now we've got devices that are optimized for primary and for secondary, and also optimized for the digital environment that we're in. Going back to the cloud-based school, we are a Microsoft school, so we had to make sure that we have devices that were really, really good at opening and delivering, and able to live edit, specifically Microsoft Office 365 platform documents. And finally, we wanted a digital environment that was as safe and secure as it is like talking to a child, or have children talking to other children on our digital environment, that was as safe and secure as our physical teaching environments. We wanted that collaboration, and we wanted to have like that kind of fluidity of learning, which meant that technically we could learn anywhere. Now, this was before COVID, okay? So like, just bear in mind, all of this was done before COVID. Like this was our vision before COVID. And it just turns out that like by March, like, a lot of this was already in place or becoming to be in place, which was why our school ended up like doing fairly well with our online learning. Okay, so it goes to the ability now, the ability of the parents to interact and be able to train like themselves to access the new school's digital environment, no matter how big or small like you want the change to be. The ability for the teachers to be able to teach in this digital environment, so they need a whole set of digital skills that are not just how do you access a Word document, but how do you manipulate that, and how do you translate that into a teaching like a teaching activity like that you can use with your students, because there's the layer on there, and also for the students, and making sure that you always have in the forefront of your mind that just because the child is in year 7 and they've been in the school for a long time, it doesn't necessarily make them fluent. Okay, you always assume that the children, no matter where they come from, have like they always have different levels of ability in academics as well as digital skills. So that the digital teaching needs to be flexible for both parents, for all parents, teachers and students, to upskill and make sure that people can access. Okay, so we always put teaching and learning, the why of teaching and learning first. Okay, and we always give more than one pathway to enhance learning through use of technology. And I'm pretty sure that this QR code just here is how we communicated this new environment to our parents. Okay, just because now this whole environment of like being like on like breakout room tables, because now we're just like breakout room virtual environments, and I'm not actually talking to you in real life, just because that is a happy memory now, does not mean that we can't enjoy training together. And there isn't an element of training together, because of course we're trying to train our children on how to collaborate and communicate online. So your teachers and your kind of your CPD or your PD or whatever you want to call it needs to be online and interactive as well. Okay, and like these are two ways that we've done this in in our school, sorry. And one of them is by use of OneNote. OneNote is brilliant, okay, but OneNote can also be a bit of a Frankenstein, a bit of a monster to people, because it can very easily scare people, okay. And one of the ways that we made it so that it wasn't as scary for every single department or every single teacher was we made it so that essentially every single thing that we wanted our teachers to do in class, for the digital skills point of view, like we put them into a digital skills classroom, like a virtual classroom, and they were our students, and we taught them as if they were students. So we gave them a OneNote that they could play with, and they had all of the essential DIS skills and kind of like they could track like their progress if they wanted to on this like digital skills OneNote. And it gave them it gave them links to all the badges like from Microsoft, which can be like completely adapted for things like Google and Apple and Common Sense Education, any kind of professional development you want to do. Okay, and this massive QR code just here is also the kind of, yes, it's teachers, but it's not just one person that's doing it. Just because someone's called a digital lead does not mean it's just one person. It's their show all the time. The best way to train teachers is to make them feel like they own it, because they do. It is their classroom, it is their teaching environment. And what we've done is we tried to make as many teachers shout out about their skills, like no matter how big or how small or how advanced or how how they think is basic, but actually is using it in a really innovative way. So every week we try to put out our DIS digital architects. They make like a little video on like what they're doing like within the classroom. It could be for retrieval practice, it could be for anything for enhanced questioning, it could be for making sure that there's student voice and they're collaborating, but essentially all the digital skills that we want to teach them within our digital strategy, they are teaching the other teachers the skills that we want them to teach. I said teach far too much there, but yes, ownership, teacher ownership of their skills is so important, because it cannot just come from one person. In the same way, it cannot just come from the teachers as well. And the reflection, and I really should have put this into ability as well, is listen to the student voice, get them to own what the environment that they're about to be in, and have yes, okay, this gentleman here spoke so eloquently to all of our parents about how we've changed the digital environment and how Teams is really helping us 1 year on, okay, but we've also had from year 7 people doing this year they're making digital skills workshops, not just digital citizenship workshops, but literally how do you put conditional formatting into an Excel sheet, and they're making little lessons, so the students can see that the other students are doing it, okay. So it makes it a bit more interesting for the students, and it also makes it a bit more relevant for them as well, okay. So within the reflection and within the ability, listen to the student voice, listen to when they say that it's not quite working out, okay, because you can force something as much as you want, but if it's not really working out for the students, it won't work for your digital strategy at all. So your digital strategy needs to be adaptable if it's not working for them, or if it's harming them in some way, if it's not as fluent as you really expected it to be. A big thing for us at the moment is Wi-Fi, okay, so we keep listening to the students' voice, to the students, and then when they have good feedback, they definitely tell us. Okay, so also listen to the voices of your parents and your teachers as well, and setting specific and accountable goals, and not just saying how is this working for you has been really useful for us as well. Okay, so we've kind of said by the end of last year we wanted to be on the journey to become a Microsoft Showcase school. We wanted to evidence this. We wanted to make sure that all the teachers were competent and also confident on Teams, that we were that we'd embedded OneNote in all of our departments across the school, which was ambitious for our first year, but the circumstances helped us along there a bit. So it meant that like we were able to kind of say like, right, how far are we away from actually doing this goal for the reflection, and how much do we need to reinforce that? How much do we need to hop back a couple of stages, maybe go back to the desire, because like, the motivation is running out now, and just kind of remind people, why are they doing this? And like, why is it so amazing for them? So the ACTAR basically is not a roadmap. And I just realized I just spelled quickly wrong there, but like, it's something that's supposed to be adaptable and quick. It's something that is supposed to be like, you can access your strengths and your weaknesses really quickly, so you can go back to that whichever stage you need to go, in order to move yourself forward. It's a working change transformation document. Okay, your action plan comes after, or for us came after this, and it bled into things like, if you guys are from the UAE and you're doing like, change the CEF documents for KHDA, or you're trying to do like documents for the BSME and so on, like, going back to how you did change transformation using this ACTAR model, like it kind of like collects evidence as you go along. So it's been really useful for us. And finally, you're doing this so that your teachers and your students flourish in the world that you live in today. Okay, the international world that we live in today. So it's really important that you don't copy someone else's ACTAR model, or you don't copy someone else's digital strategy, because just like a teaching and learning environment, you can't just copy and paste it into a school. It has got to come uniquely from you and your school. So I play education tag. And if you do want to go onto my website, then I talk a lot about digital strategy and like how we've adapted how it's helped our teaching and learning, how it's helped like other areas of the school. But there's lots of different people to listen to, lots of way more like, qualified people to listen to as well. And I'd like to give a lovely shout out to Al Kingsley, to Steve Banbury, to Mark Anderson, and to Ollie Lewis Learning, who have given me a lot of help over the last 2 years. So thank you very much to everyone, and to everyone here. And if you would like to tweet me for any questions, because I know that I can't do Q&As anymore, then please feel free. That's it.
That's great. Thank you so much, Linda. If you have any questions, you can connect with Linda through the networking system on the virtual event platform. We'd also love to hear from you, so feel free to share any thoughts or comments by sending us an email to marketing@guesteducation.com. We'll be on social media as well during the summit, so if you want to chat to us there, follow us on Twitter @guesteducation and use the hashtags #guestedtech and #guestdubai. This is just one of many on-demand videos that you can watch at any time during the summit, as well as a full program of live keynote and panel sessions across both days. We hope that you enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you, and bye-bye for now.